Welcome to another edition of The Big Seven, brought to you by the Tennessee Conservative. Go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com, subscribe, find out more. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. Now, you might be wondering who this is talking, because I am obviously not Brandon Lewis. I'm YAFFEE. I'm a new conservative talk show host in Chattanooga. You can listen at Talk Radio 102.3 if you're in that area, but you can also find out more about me online. And yes, YAFFEE is my real last name. It's spelled Y-A-F-F-E-E, YAFFEE. Yes, it is a real name, but you can follow me on X, like the YAFFEE Facebook page, or go to WGOW.com to find out more information about the show. Brandon Lewis, founder of the Tennessee Conservative, usually does this, as you know. He joins me on the show once a week, and I'm always getting great stories from TennesseeConservativeNews.com. And you should do what I did. You should subscribe to the Tennessee Conservative. Subscribe to their daily eNewsletter. You can text news to 423-205-5600. That's a way to do it. Or go to the website and just click the subscribe button on the website. TennesseeConservativeNews.com is the website. Of course, you can follow them on social media. Tennessee Conservative News, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, Getter, Rumble, all of that stuff. So you can check that out there as well. And I really appreciate Brandon asking me to fill in for the Big Seven. And, you know, there's not a shortage of things to talk about this week, of course. Got the special session, which is about to start. Governor Bill Lee wants to talk school choice, but also wants to do hurricane relief and immigration stuff. The immigration stuff's going to come up in the Big Seven. Brandon's talked a lot about that already, but obviously there's more to get to on it this week. We also have stuff, surrounding President Trump's inauguration, which was this week. Yes, he is our president now, thank God. So but we'll have stories about that and some other stuff as well. So I really appreciate you joining the show, even though Brandon isn't here. I'm really glad to be here, and hopefully after this, you can find out more about me as well. You've probably seen some of my stuff on the website already, but it's good to actually talk to you guys. Just me to you. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. So let's get to the first story here on the Big Seven. We have this story: why Donald Trump should dump his Penny Schwinn pick. So, with Tennesseans on both sides of the political aisle decrying President-elect Donald Trump's nominee for Deputy Secretary of Education, there are a few reasons why Trump should dump this pick. It'd be nice if he did, honestly. There are a lot of problems here. Now, one of the biggest issues, during the pandemic, Schwinn hatched a plot to roll out mandatory well-being checks on every child in Tennessee from birth to 18. So that went well, as you can imagine. Now, also under Schwinn's leadership, Tennessee's education department issued guidance that encouraged students and staff members to mask when they return to school. Mask mandates. Remember those? Remember the good old days of the mask mandates? Also, passed the buck to local school districts to decide whether or not to implement mandates. Schwinn was responsible for bringing critical race theory into the state's public schools through the Trojan horse that is wit and wisdom. So critical race theory, it's similar to DEI, similar to a lot of stuff that they're just trying desperately to indoctrinate kids on in public schools. And it seems that this education pick is really no different. Now, she also signed a contract with a company that provided teacher training to the state despite her husband working for the company. Oh, good. A potential conflict of interest there. So millions of taxpayer dollars were spent on contracts with TNTP. So you can find out more on the website, TennesseeConservativeNews.com, but just a couple of different items there. It would be nice if Donald Trump would just dump this pick. Maybe there'll be enough pushback with members of Congress, but I'm a little doubtful of that. Unfortunately, there have been other picks that have been a little bit more controversial. So this one kind of flies under the radar a little bit. But just the COVID protocols and critical race theory stuff in and of itself is disqualifying, at least in my opinion. So we'll see what happens there. But that's the first story here in the Big Seven. The next story: House Republicans vote to allow family members of lawmakers to remain lobbyists at Tennessee Capitol. Now, you heard that right. Not House Democrats, House Republicans. And you might wonder, why are they allowing this? We know why. The money. Of course, the money, the influence. But anyway, during a meeting of the House Select Committee on Rules, where official rules of order were decided for the 114th General Assembly, House GOP members voted down a rule change that would have prevented conflicts of interest that might occur when a lawmaker's family member is paid to lobby the General Assembly. Now, I know Brandon talked a little bit about this last week, but there's more to the story here. Democrat Representative Justin Jones proposed a change to the House Rules of Order, which applies to ethical standards and requires representatives to disclose to the Tennessee Ethics Commission personal interests resulting from a spouse, sibling, or child of the representative who is a registered lobbyist. Now, the Democrat representative suggested that this section of the rules be amended to completely prohibit this practice instead of allowing it to continue so long as it is disclosed. Now, referring to Senator Bo Watson's wife, like I said, I know Brandon talked about it last week a little bit, but Jones said, "We have a lawmaker in this General Assembly right now who is a lawmaker voting on legislation, and their spouse is a lobbyist who can lobby other members in the General Assembly, get paid, and their husband, you all know who I'm talking about, is a member of the Senate, and his wife is a lobbyist. That is corrupt. That is unethical. That gives the appearance of impropriety. If you have a spouse or a child, they should not be a lobbyist in this building." That was a Democrat saying it, but the rule change failed for probably obvious reasons. Failed in committee by a 9-2 vote, with all Republicans voting against it. So I have a feeling Brandon's going to be pretty hot on that topic when he gets back. But I wanted to give you like an update on that because the lobbyist is still going to be there. Definitely a conflict of interest there. Now, the next big story here, there's a Tennessee bill that allows approval for development projects without public input. Now, this is by Representative Kelly Kessling. It's filed legislation that would require county or local chief legislative bodies to greenlight development projects without public comment, so long as the zoning regulations or maps were previously available for public comment or review. Now, the bill is in direct contradiction to Tennessee's Sunshine Law, so that's wonderful. Specifically, the Open Meetings Act, which, quote, requires governing bodies to provide a period for public comment at every meeting where there is an actionable item on the agenda. Now, the text of the bill specifically states that public comment is restricted, despite the Sunshine Law, and gives the governing body permission to decide if the proposed development is in compliance with zoning laws or maps, so long as these documents were, at one point, publicly available. Now, Senator Richard Briggs is sponsoring the legislation in the Tennessee Senate. Overall, like I just said, the legislation appears to directly contradict and override current laws which protect citizens' voices and rights. So once again, they're trying to make sure the people are not as involved as they should be. We'll see where this goes. Kind of the beginning of this, but we'll see exactly where this goes. Now, this one's really interesting. As you know, the special session is supposed to bring up immigration, how to help the Trump administration enforce illegal laws against illegal immigrants, deportation of illegal immigrants. Well, there's a new Tennessee bill that would hold charitable organizations liable for crimes committed by illegal immigrants. So this is something that Brandon talks about a lot, and he's really onto something. There's a lot of talk from lawmakers that they're really enforcing the law against illegal immigrants, but a lot of times they're not really willing to do what it takes to stop the magnet. So there are laws that have been proposed in the past in the state of Tennessee that could really discourage illegal immigrants from coming to Tennessee at all. And a lot of times those laws, they don't get passed. Now, we all know why. There's special business interests. They like the cheap labor and everything else. Now, hopefully, maybe there's momentum in the other direction because Trump's now president. We're actually going to get serious about this. But kind of one of the examples here where we could go further than just helping the federal government, where Tennessee and the legislature could actually pass laws to help in that regard, to actually discourage them from coming to the volunteer state. But like they're so reluctant to do it. I mean, we know Democrats are going to be reluctant to do it, but unfortunately the reality is, even though we're a dominant Republican legislature, a lot of times Republicans are reluctant to do this as well, which is why places like the Tennessee Conservative exist, so we can hold them accountable. By the way, another reason to subscribe to the Tennessee Conservative eNewsletter and everything else, because not even all Republicans, just because you're a Republican doesn't mean you're a conservative, especially on this issue. Now, the bill, it's Senate Bill 0227, intends to add the following subsection to Tennessee Code. It's a charitable organization that provides housing to a person who the charitable organization knows is unlawfully present in the United States may be held liable for a loss damages, injury, or death resulting from a criminal offense committed by the person who is unlawfully present in the United States while the person is receiving housing services from the charitable organization if the charitable organization's conduct in providing housing constitutes negligence, gross negligence, or willful and wanton misconduct. So it's one of those things that if you support it, go to the Tennessee Conservative and support them, of course, but also call your lawmaker. And let's see if there's things that we can actually get done and actually get passed beyond just helping the federal government, that Tennessee could stop the magnet. Something, like I said, something Brandon talks about all the time, and it's just some other examples of this.
Guys, if you want us to continue to report and take the slings and arrows in your perspective, please go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support. If you give $50 or more, we will send you a Proud Tennessee Conservative tumbler, a koozie, and a directory of your elected officials and a couple of bumper stickers just to say thanks from old BL and the staff that works way, way hard and gets paid way, way low because it's all we can afford to pay them. So do go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support. If any of you have recently had a rich uncle die and you want to send us a larger check than $50, boy, we would take it. We will take bequests. We will figure out a way to sell a car, you name it. We need the funding. TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support. And of course, I appreciate all of you who send in donations and also words of encouragement and mailing things to us at P.O. Box 625, Signal Mountain, Tennessee 37377. That's P.O. Box 625, Signal Mountain, Tennessee 37377.
So this next one is pretty interesting. And I'm a tough on crime guy, so I tend to like this kind of stuff. But there's this is the next story of the Big Seven, of course. Proposed Tennessee legislation would try 16-year-olds as adults if they have a juvenile record. Now, proposed legislation by Senator Brent Taylor would require courts to transfer teens to the county sheriff to be held and then dealt with as though they are adults in applicable criminal court. Now, I tend to like this stuff because, especially in the Chattanooga area, there are reports out that show that Chattanooga is one of the top cities when it comes to theft. I kid you not, there is a growing crime problem in our major cities across the country, as you know. But in Chattanooga, where I am, we seem to see that a little bit more. So if we can have a bill that would be tough on, yes, juveniles as well when they need to be, I think that would be a good thing because we need to be tough on them. If we want to stop, we need a deterrence. But there's actually more to this that would help be more of a deterrence, and I'll talk about that in a second. But for this to happen in terms of them being tried as an adult, there are some conditions in the law. One, the child must be at least 16 at the time of the alleged offense. The child must have a prior adjudication of delinquency. And number three, there is a probable cause that the child committed a delinquent act and the child does not qualify to be committed to an institution for the developmentally disabled or mentally ill. Now, Taylor has also sponsored two other bills related to juvenile offenders. Senate Bill 219 would hold parents and guardians of juvenile offenders liable for restitution for expenses incurred by law enforcement in responding and investigating juvenile delinquency. I like that. I mean, a lot of times everyone asks, you see a story where a juvenile does something, you're like, where are the parents? Why are the parents not involved? Why aren't we holding the parents responsible? Now, there's another bill he's proposing. It's Senate Bill 221 would allow courts to use juvenile court records when setting bond for criminal offenses. So it's kind of a tough on crime approach. I know that some people don't like that, but it's probably needed. And like I said, we've seen a crime problem, not just with illegal immigration, but crime in generally across this country because we're not being tough on criminals. We're not putting forward a deterrent. So, and like I said, we're seeing that in Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee is no stranger to some of that. So it's good to see some of that. So we got one final story here, which is pretty interesting. It says here, a Tennessee bill filed to hold commercial entities liable for knowingly engaging in possession and circulation of obscene materials. It's kind of one of those things that's a no-brainer, but when you have special interest in business involved, I mean, who knows what happens. But conservative Representative Jody Barrett filed a new bill that would allow individuals to hold commercial entities civilly liable for knowingly possessing, purchasing, promoting, producing, selling, sending, transporting, or distributing obscene matter in Tennessee. Now, House Bill 221 states that a commercial entity would knowingly engages in action that violates its legislation or Tennessee law on sexual exploitation of children may be found civilly liable to an individual for normal, actual, or punitive damages, court costs, and reasonable attorney fees as ordered by the court. Now, this does not include stuff on the internet. That's kind of one thing that's out there. That's a whole separate issue where we need to ban minors from being able to access porn and stuff on the internet, which is good. This is not included in that, but this is something that is being put out by Jody Barrett, which is an interesting bill. We'll see how well it does. Like I said, in a conservative legislature, it seems like one of those things that's pretty common sense, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to pass in the legislature. So we'll have to see on that. I mean, we have the special session first, and I know Brandon Lewis is going to cover the special session pretty good. So before we go, I mean, those are really the big 7 stories of this week. But before we go, there is one good news story that I think is pretty interesting to get to. But before I do that, I just got to tell you once again, go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Be sure to subscribe for free to the daily newsletter. Absolutely free, so you never miss a thing. But the good news story today, conservative Tennessee lawmaker introduces resolution calling for Tennesseans to fast and pray. Now, it's being put forward by Representative Monty Fritz, introduce a resolution to designate the upcoming month of July as a time of prayer and fasting in Tennessee with the intention of seeking God's hand of mercy and healing on Tennessee. Now, there was a time in this country where this would not even be controversial. It would be a good thing to do. You know, in today's world, all the left news outlets and the Democrats and the media are going to come out and say, why is this necessary? Separation. You know all that's coming, even though it's really something that should be common sense and we probably should do all the time in the legislature. But the resolution is modeled after national and state founders who trusted in what it says, the omnipotent hand of providence to bless our land and to guide their actions. Now, Fritz said about the resolution, said, I am convinced we cannot legislate nor budget ourselves out of the hole we are in. We need his hand of blessing. A resolution is in alignment with the founders and framers seeking Almighty God's hand upon our nation. Now, recognizing that the nation in the state of Tennessee was established by founders whose Judeo-Christian values are outlined in the Bible, as you know, anyone listening knows, the resolution affirms the concept that governments are established by God to protect the rights of the individual and the teachings to do unto others as we would have them do unto us, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. From this comes the Tennessee volunteer spirit. Now, the resolution then states that only a continued commitment and adherence to those values and the laws of nature and nature's God, coupled with the dedication to our Constitution, can thwart the forthcoming attacks of our Tennessee way of life. It also acknowledges our sins and shortcomings, both individually and as a state. The document asks for God's forgiveness and for the Holy Spirit to move within the halls of government, our classrooms, our businesses, our places of worship, and our homes, bringing peace, hope, love, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, temperance, forbearance, and joy. And you have to know, at the end, I'm sure if you're a Christian listening to this, you know that is straight out of Galatians in terms of the fruits of the Spirit, which obviously would help our country, help our culture, and everything else. But they're right about the founders. You know, the founders would set forth proclamations of thanksgiving to Almighty God. In fact, before we had the Constitution ratified in 1787, we were still under the Articles of Confederation. The federal government, right after we won the Revolutionary War against the British, put forward a Thanksgiving proclamation very early on, thanking him for the victory in that. And I think that's one thing that separates the United States and the revolution of us against Britain, of the American Revolution from, say, the French Revolution. The French Revolution turned into anarchy because it was all about getting away from God, getting away from those Judeo-Christian values. So it ended up very, very destructive. Where the American Revolution, yes, was about giving more individual rights to the people and were governed by our representatives, but it was also about still thanking God and making sure we have a foundation based on Judeo-Christian values. So it's something that it's controversial to have a Thanksgiving proclamation to God in some ways, but it should not be controversial, ever. It really shouldn't. Our country is literally founded on this kind of thing. So good news there. I wanted to end with that good news. It's a conservative Tennessee lawmaker introducing a resolution calling for Tennesseans to fast and pray. So hopefully that happens. I got to say, I really do appreciate you joining me today as I'm filling in for Brandon Lewis. Maybe he'll ask me to do this in the future. You've probably seen some of my interviews I do with him on my show. And, of course, my show is YAFFEE Live, Talk Radio 102.3. Check out the podcast if you're not in the Chattanooga area. Make sure you follow Tennessee Conservative on social media, all the social media outlets, but follow me as well, YAFFEE. I'm on X, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram and all of that, and you can subscribe to my podcast. But more importantly, subscribe and support the Tennessee Conservative at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Appreciate y'all listening today. Those are the big stories. I know things are definitely going to ramp up in the next couple of weeks when it comes to the Tennessee Legislature. I got to go because my 1-year-old daughter, Evie, is downstairs wanting to play with Daddy, and we're going out to dinner later. So, I got some other things to do, but I want to make sure to give you guys the Big 7, the news, before I go. This is YAFFEE. I've been filling in for Brandon Lewis on the Big 7 for TennesseeConservativeNews.com, the Tennessee Conservative. Hope you have a good weekend. Brandon, I think, will be back next week, and I'll catch you guys next time.